Track A1. The first session, which is Track A1, is titled The Paradigm New Learning Ecosystems in Digital Classroom. So until now, as a society changed, it changed gradually following the waves of change, and many people expect that will take decades for the conservative education sector to make digital transition. However, we are seeing a rapid transformation in digital sector, much quicker than we expected due to COVID-19. So linking with the futuristic training courses, there has been restructuring of the educational environment, and we are seeing an emergence of various modalities such as blended and hybrid, and it's expanding our opportunity to effectively choose the most efficient and appropriate method. So today we will shed light on educational field that has been newly shaped due to COVID-19 and digital transformation, and discuss with three speakers about what kind of educational environment and strategies education should be conducted in the future. Firstly, I would like to introduce speakers for our first session. We have Mr. Henry Leitner, Chief Innovation Officer of Harvard University. He is waiting in the Zoom, so we will shortly be listening to his presentation. And for the second speaker, we have Mr. Chul Park, Research Fellow of the Research Center for Educational Facilities and Environment of the Korea Educational Development Institute. And lastly, we have Min-Chul Shin, teacher at Daegu General Elementary School. Now we'll listen to the first presentation. Chief Innovation Officer Henry Leitner of Division of Continuing Education of Harvard University will deliver his presentation under the theme of Innovation in Online Learning and Teaching at Harvard Extension School. He will share creative ideas and innovation success stories using digital technologies to help the public enjoy a fair and equitable academic environment at Harvard University's Lifelong Education Center. So he is supporting hundreds of professors, and then he is also teaching the assistant teachers as well. And he is also pioneer for the articular systems, so he is a co-founder of Articulation Systems. We will now listen to his presentation.
Professor Henry Leitner.
All right.
Yes, please begin your presentation. Thank you.
Greetings, everybody. Well, good evening from where I am. I'm in my office here at Harvard University, where it is in the evening. I know it's morning where many of you are. So I'm Henry Leitner, and I'm going to tell you a bit about some of our innovations in online teaching and learning at part of Harvard called the Harvard Extension School, which itself is a part of the Division of Continuing Education. So just a quick word about myself. When I teach my students, they very often ask me to say a few words about the fact that I've been at Harvard for a very, very long time. And when they ask me, well, how long have I really been at Harvard? I like to tell them, well, long enough that I have met a couple of really incredible people who dropped out of the university. So back a long time ago when I was still taking classes, I was fortunate enough to meet this individual. That's Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft Corporation. So I knew him when I was a student, and we used to work on homework together. And if you go forward some 25 years or so, I got to meet this other very famous dropout from the university. That's Mark Zuckerberg. He was actually my student, and he, of course, started the company known as Facebook. So let me tell you a little bit about the part of Harvard that I'm going to be speaking about, namely the Extension School and the Division of Continuing Education. So we have an interesting open admissions policy. As many of you know, Harvard University is arguably one of the most selective universities in the entire world, and yet there's a part of Harvard that has open admissions. And through that open admissions policy, Harvard's resources, namely its faculty and its libraries and its museums, are made available to people all over the world, people of various ages and various backgrounds. And another part of the mission that I have been very much part of is the experimentation and innovation. That is, to try out new teaching techniques that enhances the learning of non-traditional students. And by non-traditional students, I mean part-time learners, adults who perhaps have a full-time job, perhaps some young people who are homeschooled, and others. It's interesting also that this part of Harvard is it's not the youngest and it's not the oldest. It was actually founded in the year 1910 by President Lawrence Lowell of Harvard University. It was started as what he called an experiment in popular education. And by that, he was referring to the fact that it was a place where women and men from the local community could receive a college education at night. And some of the features of the Harvard Extension School have remained constant in the 112 or 113 years since it was first founded. Namely, it has very low tuition. It allows part-time study for either credit or non-credit. It offers Harvard degrees and teaching by distinguished faculty at Harvard and also from the greater Boston area. Just to give you a frame of reference, the four main pieces of this division of continuing education at Harvard has as its biggest piece the Extension School, which, as I said, is 112 years old, but it's a very large operation. It has something like 18,000 students every year, more than 900 courses, many of which have an online option. It offers graduate certificates, an undergraduate degree program, several different graduate degree programs, and we had about 1,000 students graduate with degrees last year. It was second only to Harvard College. There's another big piece to the operation, which is the summer school, which operates from the end of June up through the middle of August. And that part of our division is even older. It's 150 years old, and it serves more than 10,000 students, offers 350 courses, many of them online, and includes secondary school students. The courses run for very intensively for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 7 weeks in length. So those are the two biggest pieces of the division. And then there are two other parts: a professional development program, which offers very short, intensive courses running between 2 and 5 days, geared primarily toward middle managers. The courses are offered on campus as well as online, as well as in hybrid form. And the courses focus on things like business strategy and innovation strategy and marketing and negotiation and those sorts of topics. It has about 2,000 learners every year. And then finally, we have something called the Harvard Institute for Learning in Retirement. And this part is for retirees who want to continue an academic learning experience. And it's peer teaching. So the members run the courses. There are about 70 courses every semester, and we have around 550 members. And because of the pandemic, of course, we offered courses online and continue to do so. Now, even though I'm representing a particular division at Harvard, we have a lot of relationships with the rest of Harvard. Many of you know that Harvard consists of a variety of different schools. There's the School of Engineering, where I'm a faculty member. There's the Law School and the Divinity School and the School of Education and the Kennedy School of Government and so on. So whereas in the past, before we had online courses, we would only be able to operate with teaching the kinds of courses that the division was able to sponsor. Now, we actually offer courses that are offered at all of these different schools, including courses that come from HBX, which is the online part of the Harvard Business School, Harvard X, which is a part of edX, and that also then includes MIT. So just to give you a concrete example, MIT offers a master's degree in supply chain management, and they offer a micromaster's through edX. And what we do is take students into our management program who have completed the micromasters and offer them 4 units of credit so that they are more advanced toward their degree. So we're basically being able to sponsor courses from around the university and even from outside of Harvard itself. And that also implies our courses deal with a variety of different students. People who live within commuting distance of the university, students who are geographically distant, including a number of students who live in Asia, Europe, and South America. We have students of high school age. Some of them are homeschooled. Students who are studying at the undergraduate level. We have a number of students whose native language is not English. Adults who work part-time or full-time. Some of them actually are employees at Harvard. Some students are master's degree candidates, and then, of course, retired people. And just to give you a quick image, these little dots show you a piece of Europe, and every dot represents a student who is currently enrolled in a course that's being offered right now this semester through the Harvard Extension School. Courses in a variety of different subjects, from computer science to English literature to government to psychology and so on. And so you can see that we have grown dramatically in terms of the number of online courses that we can offer. I mean, just imagine, some of you, if 20 years ago you were told that there was going to be a worldwide pandemic and it was going to disrupt many industries, but somehow the business of higher education would continue online interactively through remote learning. I mean, it would have seemed impossible, but that in fact is what happened. And so if you notice at this growth, we actually offer now more courses, like 1,000 more courses online than we did just 5 years ago. But we were actually quite lucky, because just before the pandemic hit in March of 2020, you'll notice we already had a lot of courses online. In fact, almost 75% of our extension school courses had an online option, which meant we were in a really good place relative to the rest of Harvard and relative to many, many universities. So here's how we started off. You know, we began to record classes that were being held in front of a live audience in Harvard, classrooms. So there would be a professor up at the front of the room, and, we would have the video of that professor along with the slides that he was showing or that she was showing, and it would be synchronized, and then students would be able to watch these on demand. But what we discovered, of course, pretty quickly is that, to be able to capture a large number of courses, you can't just send videographers all over the university. So we installed these so-called capture agents into many of the classrooms to sort of automate things. But then we also realized that students want to interact. So here's an example of a course that's taught on campus where students are broken into individual groups and they're asked to solve problems 4 or 5 at a desk. It's a course on discrete mathematics. And we wanted to be able to replicate this for an online audience who were taking the same kind of a course at the extension school. And so we began experimenting with breakout rooms, so that just as you can have students in an actual physical classroom discussing a particular problem, you can do the same thing with breakout rooms in Zoom, and then have teaching assistants visit each room, just as in real life, the teaching assistant or the professor would go from table to table to give help to students who are stuck and need more advice. Okay, but then we came to the idea of, well, this is all, fine, but what we really want to be able to do is to have live interaction. In other words, while a professor is teaching a class in real time, we want to be able to also reach a distant audience and have those two audiences interact with each other. And so for that, we developed what we call Helix, the Harvard Extension Live Interactive Experience. And what that really boils down to is being able to equip classrooms in the following way. So if I'm a professor standing in front of the room, I can see not only the students who are seated in the room in front of me, but I can also see the distant audience on screens behind the live students. And behind me is another screen so that the students in the room can also see the online students. And in that way, everybody can interact with each other. And we've been able to implement this in a number of classrooms. And some of the Harvard faculty are very, very happy with it. I'm just going to show you for a minute what some of the some very distinguished faculty have had to say about this.
This is our third year using Helix for our extension school courses. And it's been a revolutionary tool for involving our online students. We got feedback from the TAs that it's a totally different experience working with the students in class, and we got feedback from the students that were online that this was really enriched their experience, and they felt a part of class that didn't feel before.
The technology that allows me to find the eye line of a particular student I'm talking to while watching all of the rest of the students in the room is very close to being in a class.
The opportunities for learning, for discussion, and for debate are dramatically increased by engaging directly, not just with a single student at a time, but with a group of students from the class who can be linked thanks to this technology.
All right, let me stop that there and tell you about some of the more recent innovations. So we received a Harvard Presidential Innovation Fund, which allowed us to build a studio, a very high-end studio. It looks very much like a television studio that allows us to run events with all of the, sort of special effects and audio-visual enhancements that you would want to see in a professional production. So an example of how this got used is as follows. We have something called, at the Kennedy School of Government, the Bloomberg Philanthropies. They have something called the Harvard City Leadership Initiative. And these sessions connect experts from a number of different universities, Johns Hopkins University, from the Harvard Business School. And we've had guests such as former President Bill Clinton, former President Bush, former President Obama, as well as Michael Bloomberg, and mayors from 350 different cities, not just in the United States, but also from Africa and from South America, talking about urban issues. Now, I'll tell you about three more innovations. The next innovation concerns the following. We were very successful at renovating a number of Harvard classrooms to allow, courses to be held with live and geographically distant students. But as many of you know, it's very expensive to renovate a classroom, especially old classrooms as we have here at Harvard, with this sort of technology. So we came up with the following idea, a portable system. And here's a quick explanation of what that entails.
Is the Helix Portable Blended Classroom, a solution which will allow us to turn any classroom on campus into a blended learning environment at a fraction of the cost of your traditional AV renovation. Much more than a simple Zoom call on a cart, our Helix Portable Blended Classroom is built around the following principles. Most importantly, the instructor and both sets of students, meaning those in the physical classroom and those online, need to be able to see, hear, and converse with each other in a streamlined way. In an attempt to level the playing field, we are asking the students in the room, like their online counterparts, to be on a Zoom call and unmute themselves while speaking. This will allow us to leverage the cameras within those laptops to give immediate, optimal views of each local student. This culture change will allow remote and local students to be able to see each other well. For those who don't have a laptop or wish to opt out of being on camera, the feed will revert to a wide shot of the classroom. The cart is optimized for the instructor perspective. Instructors always see the remote gallery in one monitor, with the active speaker in the local.
So again, the big idea here is instead of renovating a classroom, we can bring this portable system into any classroom, plug it into the network, and then again, we have the capability of having both audiences, the live students and the students who are remote, interacting with each other. And as you can see, I actually used this in a course I was teaching a year ago, and we're currently improving our prototype. We have actually a face tracking camera, so we don't actually need a human being to watch the movement of the faculty member. Two more innovations I want to tell you about. This one is a really exciting one because if you think about what it's like for an asynchronous student to watch a course that's been recorded, so for example, for those of you who are living in a very different time zone, you may not be able to attend the live class meeting, and you may need to watch it afterwards. But if you're watching a recorded class, you might hear the faculty member asking students an interesting question. And as the faculty member might tell everybody, think about the answer for a minute, turn to your nearest neighbor, share your thoughts, and discuss. Well, the asynchronous student has no option but to sit and really just watch the recording of everybody else engaging, unless, maybe they track down a family member or their pet and try to do what the others are doing in the live class. So this problem exists, when you're doing brainstorming or classroom debates or polling or really any other interactive classroom activity. So we're developing what we're calling the Immersive Classroom to change all of this. And here's just a very quick sort of demo of what it entails.
Okay, let's start off with a pair up activity. If you're watching the recording, click the pair up button right now. Okay, so here's your prompt. In Hawaii, all beaches are publicly accessible and free, but you can't expect nice bathrooms or a cafe like you can at Massachusetts beaches that seem to cost like $30 per car. Spend 30 seconds on your own thinking about the question, should all beaches be free?
So just as students in the room respond, the asynchronous student responds online. And then later on, when other asynchronous students log in, they can see what other students have commented on, and they can carry on a discussion in this way.
Now I get to finish the activity by coming up with a compromise and writing it onto a virtual sticky note. Beaches should be free for low-income people. That way, everyone has access, but wealthier people will contribute so beaches will have money to keep the ecosystem clean. And now the professor continues. Okay, your 3 minutes are up. Now everyone come up and put your stickies on the whiteboard and let's read each other's compromises and then take the time to write a comment below at least 2 other stickies. As an asynchronous student, I jump into the shared stickies area of the immersive classroom and I get to participate in this part of the activity as well. I'll read through some other compromises, upvote compromises I find particularly insightful, and I can leave comments just like this. I love this idea. And that's it. Just give me a moment to summarize. The immersive classroom.
So basically, instead of being passive and watching other asynchronous students, and that it's watching other students in the classroom become actively engaged, this idea is to allow the asynchronous students to similarly connect with peers, and it requires virtually no effort from the faculty other than clicking on one of the buttons that you just saw. One more idea. As many of you know, open spaces are really useful for student learning and for networking and collaboration, and we want to do the same thing for our online students. So we've created what we call the Study Lounge.
Open spaces are really important for student learning, networking, and collaboration. When on-campus students need a space to meet up for study groups, social events, project meetings, or other gatherings, they can go to on-campus study lounges in our student centers, libraries, and academic buildings. When online students need a space to meet up for those study groups, social events, project meetings, or other gatherings, they can go to the Gather Study Lounge. The Gather Study Lounge is a Zoom meeting that is open 24/7 for students to use, independent of where they are in the world, and independent of their time zone. We decided to make the Gather Study Lounge a simple Zoom meeting because this is a technology that faculty and students are already familiar with. All students need to do is open Gather, find the lounge, and click Join. When joining the Gather Study Lounge, students must agree to our Study Lounge Code of Conduct, which includes agreements on the topic of academic integrity and respectful behavior. During exams or other times when you don't want students to be able to access the lounge, as a teacher, you can click here to edit the lounge, click here to lock the lounge, confirm, and save your changes. And now, students see this notice indicating that the study lounge is temporarily locked by teaching staff. Once the exam is over, simply come back to Gather, edit the lounge, and switch it back to Open 24/7, and the lounge will be ready for use again.
So we are finding that students really take advantage of this 24/7 capability to meet informally or to meet at planned times so that they can collaborate on projects and basically work together in a virtual space the way that we might work together in a library or some other meeting facility. And then just I'll close with this last idea, some future work we're looking at, thinking about the metaverse. Here's a virtual classroom. These individuals are not in that classroom. They are scattered across different geographical locations.
Whoa, here we are. Hey guys.
Christian, welcome.
Hey, good to see you guys. Have you guys been here the whole time?
Yeah, we've been waiting for you.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, this is really good to see you. So this is the Helix virtual room here. Looks like, yes. There's our lower third that says so. So, all right.
All right. So that's just to give you a sort of a hint of where we're going with some of this. Anyway, it's been a great, exciting time. I mean, you know, the pandemic has actually pushed us to innovate faster than we had been doing previously, and it's just a really fun position that I'm in, both teaching computer science and also being able to lead a team of very talented software developers and other people to push the innovation. Thank you for listening, and I will be staying on for the panel in a little while.
네, 강연 잘 들었습니다.
Thank you very much for your presentation.
굉장히 흥미로운 내용을 많이 공유해 주셨죠.
So it was indeed a very interesting presentation, and hybrid type classrooms can be introduced, and he introduced a prototype for it.
학구열 넘치는 많은 분들이
A lot of participants for this forum will be really interested in what the Harvard can offer for the future of education and the future of classrooms, and I'm also interested in taking the courses. So we're going to invite Professor Leitner once again for the Q&A session after listening to all the presentations for TRACK-A.
Q&A session. Thank you. 네, 대단히 감사합니다.
Thank you very much.
여러분 계속해서 저희 유튜브 댓글창에 많은 질문과
So there are a lot
의견을
of people
남겨주시고
posting
계시는데요.
questions on YouTube channel, and we are closely following up on your questions, and we are already seeing a lot of questions that are being posted. And during the Q&A session, we'll be able to entertain some of the questions that you post online. Now let us move on to the next presentation. And the next speaker is Mr. Sung-Chul Park, a research fellow from the Korean Education Development Institute. He is going to talk about the educational effects of school building restructuring in South Korea. And he's going to share with us his experience of the projects that he was part of in restructuring the school buildings in Korea. He received PhD of Architectural Engineering in University of Seoul, and since 2009 he has been studying on user participatory design, student-centered school building design, school design, guidelines for credit system, crime prevention through environmental design, and Korea Educational Development Institute. He received the Outstanding Research Award from National Research Council for Economics, Humanities, and Social Sciences in 2007, and he was listed in the Market's Who's Who, a Global Biography Dictionary in 2017. Please join me welcoming Mr. Park with a big hand. Good morning. My name is Park Sung-Chul from Korea Educational Development Institute. There are mainly two things that I do at the institute.
I'm interested in school building structures and school safety. For the past 2 years, my research has been more centered toward the school spaces. I'm interested in not just the school building architecture, but my interests include how the school curriculum should be aligned with the space design of school buildings in Korea. So, in the first page of my slide, on the top left, you see some pictures, and these are some of the pictures from my projects. And these are school spaces, and these schools are 40 to 50 years old, and we restructured the spaces in these buildings. And I'm also part of many school building restructuring projects for all school buildings. The spaces can always be changed, and they will be really useful for educating talents for the future. And we need to understand the educational effects of having new space design, and it's not clear yet. And understanding the effects is really important because the government and the education office and local municipalities invest a lot of money in order to redesign the school spaces, and we have to have a clear justification for continuing those projects, and we should be able to understand the correlation between the new school spaces and the educational outcome, which will motivate other schools to pursue similar projects in Korea. This project and study began in 2020, and in 2019, the school building restructuring project began in earnest, which became the basis for Smart School project. With the start of this project, of course, we researched 200 or so overseas projects, and we understood the school building structure of other countries, and we wanted to understand the difference between other countries and the Korean school building structures. We reviewed many literature, and we were able to extract some keywords. That's learning outcome. Understanding learning outcome is really important because when we conducted projects in Korea in the past, the classroom spaces were considering something that are not relevant to learning outcome. Whenever I visit schools, they explain their educational spaces, and they do not provide me with details on what kind of activities take place in those spaces. But unfortunately, things are not changing. The first thing that we did with the beginning of the study was that we established and published a guideline. In this guideline, as you see in this layout, outside the layout, you see the text. We are currently revising the national curriculum, and back then the latest curriculum was the 2015 version, and based on the 2015 version, some guidelines were suggested for school spaces. It looks really similar to correctional facilities, but you see there are a lot of differences from what it used to look like from what it looks like. It looks like really a jail cell, but there are different spaces that are embedded here. So if you take a look at this layout, Korean national curriculum can be considered something that is embracing a lot of new principles as suggested by OECD and other international agencies, but unfortunately, our school classrooms are designed in a way that only regional education is provided. So we really need to think about how we can transform these spaces in schools. So there are a lot of suggestions if you look at overseas literature. And if you look at the second indicator of Commission for Architecture and the Built Environment, and the school spaces or school buildings are related to academic outcomes. But we should also look at other factors, and we also need to look at other indicators. If you look at the first indicator, school spaces are closely related to student health. But of course, the example is from hospital, but the school building is closely related to students' health. And having quality designs for the school buildings can speed up recovery in hospitals by 27%. And in Korean schools, students are required to learn a lot of things, and we need to make sure that those education can be delivered in effective and efficient manners. So we have to understand that high quality buildings can improve learning in schools by 10%. And it is also related to increased productivity in school and also in the workplace. And also having high quality school buildings is closely related to safety. There are a lot of cases where schools do not actively respond to school crimes, and in that case, schools or school buildings cannot be open to the general public. So it is important to reduce crime rates by having quality building design. So all these elements are closely related to how school spaces or school buildings are designed. I think you already have similar experiences, as is shown in this survey. Teachers and parents and all the users of school buildings agree with the fact that well-designed schools improve children's education. But the problem here is, even if we have all these conclusions, but we need to have the qualitative assessment on the relationship between school building design and children's education. I'm going to show you a short video. I'm going to show you how I redesigned the school building spaces.
전체적으로 원주 치학고의 고교학습제 공간을 만들 때는 가장 중요한 컨셉은 다양한 교수 학습을 반영할 수 있는 러닝센터 형태로 꾸미는 것이 키포인트가 되겠습니다. 그래서 러닝센터 안에는 크게 4가지의 공간으로 구분이 되겠는데요. 첫 번째로는 이론 강의 공간, 두 번째로는 토의 토론 공간, 세 번째로는 개별 학습 공간, 네 번째로는 휴식 공간, 이런 식으로 해서 크게 한 4가지의 공간을 각 층마다 다양하게 조성하는 것에 초점을 뒀습니다. 4층 공간의 핵심은 이론 강의 중심의 러닝센터가 되겠습니다. 그래서 여기에는 계단형의 강의실을 둬서 미리 대학에 내가 가서 생활을 하는 듯한 공간을 만들려고 노력을 했고, 3학년 학생의 특징상 공강이라든지 아니면 소인수 강의가 많기 때문에 그 옆에 있는 공간에서 개별학습 내는 소인수 강의를 원활하게 수행할 수 있도록 이렇게 조성을 했습니다. 보시게 되면 공간의 구조는
So this is how the space is structured, which is quite simple. So you're looking at the layout of the swim. There are 4 different spaces here. On your right, because in Korea we have basically lecture-based classrooms, we have the lecture rooms, and there is also space for debating, and next to it, we also have a space for students to study individually, and we encourage student-initiated learning. So in order to improve students' agency, we also created the breakout space. We also need a space for rest. And this is how we designed the space for this school. There is the concept of agency that we reflected in the school building or school space design. When students are agents in their learning, they are more likely to have learned how to learn. Of course, they learn the things that the teachers teach the students, but The OECD uses the term agency, which is self-directed learning. Of course, we do not know what the student will decide to learn. In the process of teaching and learning, what the student wants to learn changes dynamically. So those urges should be accepted and encouraged on a real-time basis by the teacher. So having the design that enables such self-directed learning and agency, we created the design in such a way. Here the important keyword is diversity. As I described before, we have diverse students and we have diverse teachers. And as time goes by, the level of diversity or diversity of the student groups and teacher groups will change. And also we will see changes in pedagogy. Therefore, the space should be designed in a way to be able to embrace such dynamism of the diversity of students and teachers. That's why we wanted to create and embrace diversity in the space design. I would like to share with you the interview that we had with teachers and students, and we'll share with you their response from this project. Let me show you another short video.
집중력이 더 높아지는 것 같고 시설이 대학 시스템이랑 비슷하게 된다는 느낌이 들어서 미리 체험해 볼 수 있는 기회가 되고 친구들의 참여도가 더 높아진 것 같아서 좋은 결과를 봤다고 생각합니다.
원래 수업 시간에 친구한테 모르는 문제 물어보기가 조금 어렵잖아요. 선생님 말씀도 들어야 되고 또 수업이 방해가 될 수도 있으니까 안 되는데 아예 수업 자체가 이제 그런 식으로 되니까 도움도 많이 받을 수 있는 것 같아서 좋은 것 같아요.
정형화된 공간들이 대부분이어서 학교에 학생이 맞춰간다는 느낌을 많이 받았거든요. 근데 이렇게 공간이 변화하니까 학교도 학생에 맞춰서 변화한다는 느낌을 많이 받았어요.
보시게 되면 학생들이 했었던 인터뷰 내용을 기반으로 해서
So based on the answers that we got from the teachers, we were able to extract three important implications. Through this new space design, now students can concentrate better in learning. And better concentration does not come from the stepped classroom design, because as we just saw in the video, the students were able to concentrate better because the presenters switched from teachers to students. Students used to be just listeners, but now they come forward and make presentations, and that led to better concentration of students in this stepped classroom. So the main player of the education changed thanks to the changes in space design. And the second implication that we can extract is that thanks to this new design, they can ask questions more freely. This means the space itself, of course, encourages free discussions and debate, but at the same time, the new design can always embrace and accommodate the changing needs of the students and teachers. Last but not least, I think this is the most important aspect. We often use the term agency, which means the students are the students take initiatives in their own learning. But students really do not understand the importance or meaning of self-directed learning. But without teachers highlighting importance of self-directed learning, the space itself can encourage students to take initiatives and take agency in their own learning. So we have OECD 2030 targets, and we also believe the importance of the self-directed learning of students, and this space can turn the students into those agents in their own learning. Now I'd like to show you another short video, and we'll listen to the students.
별관의 역시 마찬가지로 동일한 공간이 있고 학생들이 자유롭게 앉아서 강연을 듣거나 휴게할 수 있는 공간이 마련되어 있는 곳이 한 곳이 있습니다.
사실 되게 기존에 있었던 딱딱한 자습실의 이미지가 아니라 학생들이 되게 편안하게 일상생활에도 겪을 수 있는 공간으로 조성이 되어서 공부를 한다는 부분에 있어서 마치 학교에 있다고는 느낄 수가 없었고 편안하게 카페에 가서 공부하는 것과 같은 그런 효과를 느낄 수가 있었기 때문에 되게 조금 마음에도 안정을 가지고 차분하게 친구들이랑 대화도 하고 하면서 진행할 수 있었던 것 같습니다.
학교다 보니까 학생들이 교실 말고는 있을 공간이 없었는데 그래서 개별적으로 뭔가를 학습을 한다거나 아니면 뭔가 모여서 조별로 활동할 공간이나 아니면 심지어 뭔가 앉아서 쉴 공간도 없었거든요. 그래서 이번 리모델링을 통해서 그런 학생들이 활동할 수 있는 다양한 공간을 만들고 싶었습니다. 2층, 3층을 쓰는 학생들은 러닝센터가 있어서 그런 이제 새로운 공간이 생긴 거잖아요. 그런데 1층에 1반, 2반이 2개 교실이 들어와 있게 됐는데 그 층은 러닝센터를 만들어줄 공간이 없었어요. 그래가지고 그럼 이 친구들도 나름대로 사용할 수 있는, 쉴 수 있는 공간을 만들어주자 한 게 아이디어로 나온 게 이제 그 앞에 데크 공간이었습니다.
친구들이랑 같이 떠들거나 아니면 공부하다가 힘들 때 쉬러 나와요.
이렇게 돗자리 깔고 친구들이랑 떠들거나 쉴 때 많이 옵니다.
일단 제가 제일 눈에 들어오는 건 아이들이 3, 4, 5 모인다는 거예요. 이동식 수업이 많아지면서 서로 다른 반 아이들이 모여서 같이 과제를 한다거나 팀을 구성해야 되는 일들이 생기는데 그런 일들을 이제 이렇게 모일 공간들이 있으니까 할 수 있어요. 네.
So from this interview, we can also extract 3 implications. One is convenience and comfortability. It is not really about having a student lounge for the students during the break time, but what it really means is that because students spend most of their times in the school, in the classroom, they should feel comfortable at school. So creating a student lounge is not sufficient. We need to provide them with a space where they can get together and hang out and relax. Another important implication is that when we design the rest space or student lounge, because students also want to take a rest, not just indoors but outdoors, we have to make sure that we create a space for them to take a rest outdoors in order to nurture a responsible citizens for the future in a democratic society. We have to encourage our students to get together easily and conveniently, both indoors and outdoors, so that they can socialize easily. I'd like to show you another video which shows the response from the teachers.
학교 수업의 형태가 교과의 내용이나 특성에 따라서 다양해졌고요. 그리고 학생 중심의 수업을 운영을 하기 위해서 다양한 크기와 형태의 교실이 필요했습니다. 공간이 변하다 보니까 선생님들이 그 공간에 맞는 새로운 수업 형태를 계속 시도해 보시고요. 네, 수업의 형태가 다양해지는 것 같습니다.
고교학점제의 가장 대표적인 목적 중에 하나가 학습자 중심의 다양한 활동 수업이라고 생각이 드는데 이걸 주저하셨던 분들도 좀 있거든요. 근데 공간이 바뀌다 보니까 이런 것들을 한번 시도해 보겠다라는 선생님들도 많고요. 실제로 이 사업으로 인해서 공간이 변화가 됐고 그래서 학생이나 선생님이나 긍정적인 반응을 보이면서 공간의 변화로 인해서 경험이 좀 확장이 될 것 같고 경험이 확장되면서 좀 더 성장할 수 있지 않을까 그렇게 기대하고 있습니다.
프로젝트 학습실을 쓰신 선생님께서 이런 얘기를 해주셨어요. 이 프로젝트 학습실에서 정말 그 탐구 과정을 지켜볼 수 있어서 굉장히 좋았고 이 수업의 변화를 공간의 변화로 이렇게 가져올 수 있지 않았나. 활동 단위로 선생님들이 선택을 해서 이동을 하면서 차시 수업에 맞게끔 활용을 하시는 모습을 보면서 주제 탐구 학습은 모둠 학습실, 프로젝트 학습실에서 이루어지고 그 결과 발표는 계단형 강의실에서 학생들에게 좀 의미 있는 시간으로 이렇게 활용하시는 모습을 보면서 수업의 변화가 이제 좀 시작이 되지 않았나 그렇게 생각해 봅니다.
예, 영상을 통해서도 한 세 가지 정도 시사점을
You can also derive three
첫
implications
번째는
from this
뭐냐면은
interview with
교사 학습
teachers.
방법이 다양합니다.
First
이거는
one is
뭐냐면
diversity of the
선생님들이
teaching
다양한
methods.
교사 학습
That
방법을 해야
means,
된다는 것은 우리가 다 알고
of
있어요.
course,
근데
teachers
문제는
need to
뭐냐면 그걸
experiment
강조해서
different
내지는
types of
강요해서
pedagogical
되는 한계가
methods,
있다는 겁니다.
but
그러니까 아까
highlighting the
말씀드린
importance of
것처럼
having
그런
diverse
공간들을
teaching
다양하게
methods is not
만들어줌으로써
enough by
선생님들이
providing
자연스럽게 다양한
enabling
교사 학습 방법을 진행해
spaces.
나갈 수 있도록
We
이렇게
also
만들어주는
encourage
것이 중요하고
teachers to try and
두 번째로는 이런
experiment
공간이 왜
different types of
중요하냐면
teaching
선생님들도
methods.
경험이 중요합니다.
And for
왜냐하면
teachers,
선생님들도
experience is really
교육에 있어서는
important
학습자의
because
개념이거든요.
teachers are
지속적으로
also
자기 개발을
learners
해야 되는
of
거기
teaching
때문에
methods,
이런
and they
공간을
need to
통해서
develop their own teaching
아이들이
methods
스스로 성장하는 걸
continuously.
보면서
By
선생님들도
watching
성장해가는
them,
이런
or watching the students grow, the teachers can
마지막으로는
also
이
improve their
상대적으로 이제
teaching
그
methods. At
공간이
the same
주도하는
time,
그런 것들이 굉장히 중요합니다.
there are a lot of things that the
물론
space can
선생님들이
drive.
주도하는
Of
것을
course,
최종 목적으로 하지만
we want
이런
to
공간을
have the
만듦으로
teachers who
인해서
lead a
선생님들이
lot of
주도할 수 있는 그
changes,
여건을 만들어주는
but
이런
we
공간.
create a
이런
favorable
것들이 이제
environment for
이런
them
공간 제공을
to
통해서
lead
얻을 수 있는 효과라고 볼 수가
changes
있겠습니다.
in classroom.
그래서 이런 걸 하려면 좀 조금 더 이제 디테일한 그런 거를 진행 과정 중에
Of
하면 좋은데
course,
제가
we
했던
need a lot
프로젝트에서는
of
보시는
details
것처럼
for
일반적으로
this
이제
type
모델링을
of
선생님들이 이렇게
project.
합니다. 이것도
This
이렇게
is a
선생님
type of
그룹에서
models
만드신
that the
건데 이렇게
teachers
만드는
came
것에서
up
끝나는
with,
것이 아니라
but we do not
실제로 이렇게
stop our
교육과정
efforts here.
구조를 두고서 선생님들이
We
각
align
공간에서
this
어떠한
space
수업을
design
어떻게
with the
진행할지를
national curriculum.
구체적으로
The
워크숍
teacher think
당시에 이미
about
설정을 어느 정도 하고 하는
what
거죠.
kind of school
이런
activities
워크숍
or
공간이
curriculums they
만들어졌을
want
때
to
직접적으로
operate
이제
in
참여를
what
하실 수
kind
있기
of
때문에
space.
이런 거를 워크숍 단계 조금 더
We
디테일하게
organize
해보시는
workshops
것을
with teachers to be able
제가
to
갖고 있는 생각은
flesh
이렇게
out
생각하는 게
these level of
실질적으로 이제
details for
에이전시는
the
우리
space
학습자이지만
design. Of course,
실제로 이
the
사업을
agent
이끌어가고
is our
아이들의
students,
그런 의견을 가장 잘
but
받아줄
the
수 있는
students are the
것이
ones
선생님이기 때문입니다.
who listen to
여기
the
나와 있는
opinions
힐러
of
보시는
the
얘기처럼
students.
학생 결국은
As was
학생이
said
가장
by
중요한데 그렇게 중요하게
Mr.
할 수
Ken
있는 그 여건
Robinson,
자체는
we
선생님들로부터
also believe
나온다.
that great
동력은
teachers are the
선생님으로부터
heart
나온다.
of
그렇기
great
때문에 선생님들의
schools.
그런 의견을 잘
That's
반영해야
why it
되는
is really
것이고요.
important to
그래서 제가
reflect the
이제 갖고
ideas
있는
of
것은 이
teachers as
프로젝트를
well.
쭉 진행하면서 네 가지 정도가 가장 중요하다는 생각이
I think four things are really important in this type of project. It is really important to have students at the center for space design, and also we need to have a diversity in our space. And we also need to create a highly constructive learning space, and we also need to ensure agility in our school building restructuring efforts. With that, I'll finish my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
네, 발표 잘 들었습니다.
Thank you very much for
와,
your
정말 이
presentation.
학교 공간 재구조화로 교육적인
So redesigning school buildings and school spaces can have a lot of benefits both for students and teachers, and having different spaces can expand the experiences both of teachers and students, and it can also enable further growth of both teachers and students.
역시 이후에 Q&A 시간.
We will also invite Mr. Park once again for the Q&A session later.
지금 세 번째 발표를 소개해드릴 시간입니다. 신민철 교수님, 우리 교사님께서 지금 발표를 준비하고 계시는데요. 자, 트랙-A 첫 번째 세션 마지막 발표는요. 대구 진월초등학교에서 근무하고 계시는 신민철 선생님입니다. 교육의 진화, 블렌디드 러닝이라는 주제로 코로나19 이전과 이후에 이루어진 이 블렌디드 러닝의 수업의 모습을 살펴보면서 블렌디드 러닝이 가진 장점 그리고 효과 그리고 앞으로 만들어가게 될 미래 교육의 청사진에 대해서 이야기를 해보도록 하겠습니다. 신민철 연사님을 조금 더 소개를 해드리면요. 대구 진월초등학교에서 근무하는 초등학교 교사로서 에듀테크 기반의 미래 교육을 만들어가고 있는 교육 혁신가이십니다. 코로나19로 인한 갑작스러운 위기 상황에서 전국에 있는 선생님들을 비대면 상황에서 함께 모아서 학교가자닷컴 프로젝트를 수행하고 이를 통해 하루 10만 명의 학생에게 양질의 교육 서비스를 제공하셨습니다. 이러한 연사님의 교육 혁신 사례는 2020년 구글이 선정한 세계 스승의 날 올해의 교육 사례로 선정이 되었기도 했고요. 2021년에는 유네스코에서 코로나19 기간 동안 한국 교육의 대표 사례로도 소개를 했습니다. 현재 구글 공인혁신 교육가로 활동하고 계시고요. 교육부 교육 빅데이터 위원회의 교사 전문 자문위원으로 활동하고 계십니다. 자, 그럼 세 번째 발표 지금부터 정해 듣도록 하겠습니다.
네, 네, 안녕하세요. 교육의 진화 블렌디드 러닝을 주제로 오늘 발표를
Hello everyone, my name is Simin Seo. I'm a presenter for
잠시 넘어가도록 하고요.
who will be delivering presentation on the new learning ecosystem in digital classroom. So first, let me explain what blended learning is.
블렌디드 러닝은 위와 같이
As you can see in this slide, blended learning is a mixture of online and offline classrooms.
블렌디드 러닝에 대한 개념들은 상당히 좀 다양합니다.
And there are various concepts about blended learning. So it's a mix of the educational methods and media. And second, it has to do with the mixing the instructional method. And third is the mixing the online and offline learning. And is a conceptual development of the third case that I've just explained to you, because there is distance learning, which is a remote learning, and then offline school can be distinguished, but using ICT tools in offline classroom can also be understood as a blended learning. So if we comprise all of this in order to maximize the effectiveness of learning, the blended learning is about mixing the learning methods of both online and offline. So the concept of the blended learning continues to develop. So there's a professional terminology saying that this is the umbrella terminology. Then why do we need blended learning? I think we need to talk about this. This will be raised often during the forum is digital transformation. Many people talk about industrial revolution or industry 4.0, and this is accelerating the change. Industrial Revolution 4.0 has changed the society, and the COVID-19 has further accelerated the change. And it has accelerated the change in the classroom, and because of the online number of devices are being distributed very rapidly with the COVID-19. So this is how I ran my classes. The Classroom Innovation Project, I applied the blended learning in my school field. So this shows from 2017 to 2020. So you can see that the television monitor was very small before 2017, and the students had one tablet PC per group, but you can see that the number of monitor had increased to 2. So one monitor for students and one monitor for students. And each student had a device. And then our school got funding for the spatial restructuring project, so we were able to put the monitor in the middle of class, in front of the classroom. And then after I moved to a different school, the COVID-19 broke, and then you can see we got equipped with various devices, and each of the students were provided with devices. And starting from 2021 till now, we are having class like this, as you see in the photo. So we can have a class online on demand, and there are some students who can't come to school due to COVID. And just like the case of Harvard, we can see that we are having an interactive classroom. If you look at the photo on the right-hand side, students have connected to the Zoom. So asynchronized students have joined us. And these are not the students, but they're actually the parents who have joined us to see, and they can actually feel as if they are in the classroom for open class. And then, why do we have to pursue blended learning? So I think we need to focus on the benefits of blended learning. So I have summarized it into these 3 parts. First, it can overcome the time-space constraints, and it enables tailorized learning based on the data, and it can maximize collaboration. So look at the slide. This is a class that was conducted last year. On the right-hand side, I don't know if you can read the font. One can see one person conducting a remote class with the students. So you can see that this is from the King Sejong station.
남극 세종과학기지 연구원이라고 하면
So researcher King Sejong Station is a place where it's too far for students to go, but we have connected the person through Zoom, and they're having a class together. So it enables overcoming the limitation. You know, the time difference is a 12-hour difference between Korea and the South Pole. So they have overcome the limit of space and time and delivered a very insightful presentation about the ecosystem and South Pole. And next slide is in 2020, when the COVID-19 situation became very serious in Daegu. Not only it's actually a city where we started face-to-face education. And they had the exchange program with the Chelsea Primary School in Australia. So when our classmates did the concert, and the students in Australia were able to watch this, and the same vice versa. So we had this kind of cultural exchange program, overcoming time-space constraints. And if you look at the next slide, can you sense what it is about? You can see only a few students sitting on the left-hand side, and you can see on the right-hand side, students that are connected through Zoom. This is a class that was conducted in June 30th of 2020, so I remember the exact date. So this is the day when I attempted hybrid class. This was possible thanks to the support of the EdTech, and because I had built a lot of cases where I applied blended learning. I prepared a short video clip, so let's watch this video for us to better understand how this... It's not working?
이런 블렌디드 러닝 상황에서는 상당히 다양한 상황들이 벌어질 수 있기
So
때문에
there can be various circumstances or various situations that can unfold in blended learning. So we have to prepare. So if you can go to the SmartTube YouTube channel, you can look at this online and offline hybrid class video. So I will move on to the next slide. Please take a look at this slide.
네, 이 장면 한번 뒤에 보여주시겠어요? 네, 지금 이 장면 뭐냐면요. 학생이 코로나19로 인해서 학교에 못
So due to COVID-19, when students they are infected and they can't come to school, then we can connect them to students through Zoom and conduct hybrid learning. So you can see that the students are watching the video and participating in the science experiment together, and you can see that the students who have joined synchronously are also expressing their opinions. So it's overcoming time and space constraints. And in this blended learning circumstances, the school will be equipped with all the online equipments and devices. So students don't necessarily have to stay in the classroom. They can be out of the classroom. So instead of carrying textbook with them, students usually will be carrying tablets with them when they are studying. So you can see on the left-hand side that students have the tablets when they go to the libraries and searching for information. If you look at the top right-hand side photo, you can see the students involved in conducting science experiments. So along with the science textbook, they have the tablets with them. So they take photo of their experiments and then exchange opinions with other students. And you can see the students finding various shapes near them. So instead of students saying, I saw this shape or that shape, they can carry on their tablets with them and take photos of the shapes. So this is another good example of overcoming time and space constraint. Next thing that I would like to tell you about is personalized learning or tailored learning. So this is a math learning program provided by Khan Academy. So after students solve the questions, the outcome is provided in LMS data. So if you look at here, whenever students solve a question, if they press this button, provides the feedback to the educator about what the missed questions. So you can, I'm not trying to say that this offers convenience to the teachers, but teachers can use this data, and then it provides a matching service with by providing analytical data of LMS. So it enables much more personalized learning or teaching.
또 이제 교사 입장에서는
And from the teacher's standpoint of view, it can save time significantly because when the visualized data is provided using LMS, teachers can look at it right away. So teachers can efficiently use this. And when we implement blended learning, I feel that I'm doing a co-coaching with the online teacher. So teacher can spend less time on scoring the test paper, but based on this data, teacher can spend more time on providing face-to-face guidance or feedback. So I think that is a key benefit of blended learning.
영상 자료를 제가 보여드리면 참 좋겠지만
It would have been good if I was able to show you the video clip, but because of the time constraint, I will move on to the next slide.
장점 중에 제가 생각에
Another benefit of blended learning that I would like to share with you today is maximize collaboration. You can see students lying down and you might think that are they watching YouTube? They aren't. So while they are participating in the group activities, they are working on a project together of making a product for the village. So they're using Google presentation or MS Office 365. So by utilizing this kind of tools, students get together and they work together on a project. If you ask me what the big change was with the blended learning, I think it was the role of teachers, because it's actually the students that runs the class. So we usually think that it's the teachers who teach, but it actually is the students who teach. And then what teacher does is teachers provide feedback. So the educator's role is not a teacher. I think educator's role is providing feedback. And the activities that they do is shared on demand, and you can see the students doing a classroom together with the Australia, and they are doing a project. Australia and Korea is a different season, so in our time, the Christmas is very cold, but in Australia, the Christmas time is summertime, so it's hot. So in the Google Classroom, students got together and then they posted questions and then they made presentations and then they share screens together and then they deliver presentations for this joint project. So in this blended learning circumstances, it is going beyond the remote learning, so they can communicate together through online and collaborate together. So I think that is a key benefit of blended learning. So I said before Corona and after Corona, this is why I made my slide as a BCAC. So I want to find implication looking at the pre-COVID and post-COVID. This is a micro dust capstone. So this was a project based on the micro dust capstone, and I want to use the big data and community mapping. And the classes was comprised into 8 stages. First, we started with reading books, and then second, we did. Lastly, we had a remote class with the experts. So I gathered together all the benefits of online and offline, and let me show you how it worked. It's a video, so I will move on to the next slide. So this is a reading. So you can see that this is a topic that's far off from the online learning, but I was able to expand the cognitive horizon of the students through reading. And to leverage the big data, I used the bar graph and the line graph. So it was an opportunity to learn about these graphs. And we have courses statistics playground. So students went to the sites to learn about the big data, and then we moved to the Google Classroom. And based on the data gathered from courses, they tried to put those data. And it was a practice session for data visualization. If you look at on the right-hand side, it shows the current status of the dust particles in Korea. You can see that the difference between Seoul, Daegu, and Busan. So just because there are a lot of cars in the Seoul, the dust particle, the micro dust problem will be severe. So instead of just hearing that story from teachers, they can actually check this fact by themselves through this kind of data visualization. So actually, student made this. So student entered the data correctly, and this kind of visualization can be easily drawn automatically. So it's about what students can learn by using this kind of tool that matters. And this is the video that was taped by the broadcasting agency because it was released in the news, and this is was the time where we tried to interpret the data and the time where we had the debate. And going beyond the teaching in classroom, we are reaching out to the community. So I collaborated with the community mapping project, and based on Arduino, we introduced these devices that measures the microdust, and then we connected this with other community and made a visualized map. And after doing this kind of community mapping activity, so you can see that this was the outcome of our students' project. You can see that it's a comparison of data between our region and the other region. And in the US Murray, there was a Professor Lim who participated together. So we had a Q&A session together with this expert in wrapping up the project. So when students return to school, when we think about are we going to use a lot of digital devices, if we can use the devices in this way, our learning will change. And if our learning, the way of our learning change, then I think our education will change. Now, I would like to show you some of the environment projects that was conducted after COVID-19, but I cannot play the video clip. But if you come to my YouTube channel, you can view this video. If I briefly explain to you about this project, our school had some issue because it's in the rural area, and there's only one class for one grade. So when I thought about how I can address this issue, instead of going to other school or visiting other school, I can connect via Zoom to other schools, and then you apply the blended learning. So it was not just that two classes were connected, but two classes in two different schools were able to conduct the projects together. And many teachers experienced the situation after COVID-19. So even after the COVID-19, we can use the digital learning because that has transformed our learning. And I think it's very important to experiment first. So in this kind of a remote classrooms, many teachers have already accumulated experiences using digital technology. So even if we transform into blended learning, I think many teachers and students will be easily able to adapt to the change. So whether it's pre-COVID or post-COVID, whether it's offline schools or online schools, I'm sure that we can continue to offer best teaching through blended learning. Thank you very much. Thank you. Very exciting presentation. Blended learning. He shared with us the benefits of online class and offline class, and it's a way to maximize the benefits of both online classroom and offline classroom. I can see that he has conducted many different experiments in his classrooms, and he's really an innovator. I was very excited to see all the different postings or comments and questions. Now is our time to introduce some of the questions that came up. So let me first read the words of encouragement. I want to have a lot of interest in EdTech, and I want to apply this in the educational field. And there are teachers who have participated for the first time this year. and teachers who are participating every year. Well, I'm participating every year. Well, it's good work to the interpreters. I'm sure it must be a tough work. For 3 days, I will be your moderator, so I will highly appreciate the words of encouragement that you post in YouTube. So first, let me read the question. And because Mr. Min-Chul Shin delivered the presentation, he talked about the blended learning. In blended learning, I think students' volunteer participation or commitment is very important. How were you able to stimulate some voluntary commitment from the students? Well, when we say voluntary blended learning, yes, voluntary commitment is very important, but if you make the student to be the main actor for the learning, then they participate very actively. So what I tell them is that you are the teacher and I'm the helper. And then they feel very proud of the fact, and I saw them participating much more actively. Wow, you told them that they are the teacher. That's a very inspiring comment. So it gives them an opportunity for them to voluntarily participate in the learning. So I think it will be a good comment that other teachers can use. So let's listen from Sangchul Park.
So the examples that you introduced during the presentation were really good, and maybe the projects can be carried out in schools with a lot of extra spaces, but there are other schools without such extra spaces or insufficient free spaces. You have to understand clear that all these old schools had limited indoor spaces. And initially we thought that there will be not a lot of room for us to improve the space. There are 15 projects that I was involved so far, and there is no single project where the schools thought that they had sufficient space. If you have a big apartment, it feels big in the beginning, but later it doesn't feel that big. So think about your own apartment. If we want to renovate our house, what do we have to do? We really have to redesign the existing spaces. I recently had a major decluttering in my apartment, and the refrigerator was broken, and in order to fix it, we had to remove and declutter all the things that are not necessary. It's same for our old schools. There are a lot of dead spaces that teachers do not use or teachers do not use often, and also there are spaces with overlapping functions. For example, there is teacher's lounge. Of course, we need a space for teachers to relax, but people do not really use the space because the function of it is not really convenient for the teachers to use. And there are also computer labs. But a lot of times, those computer labs are not used for blended learning because the computer labs are not functioning properly. So we have to redesign this space so that the computer labs can serve the purpose of providing or operating blended learning. So doing all those projects, I realized that there are, of course, schools with too many students, but including those schools, we can always create 4 or 5 new spaces. And there are also existing classrooms that in your schools, and we can redesign and repurpose those existing classrooms, and it will lead to creation of new spaces. And instead of just thinking that you don't have extra space, you can reduce unnecessary space and transform those dead spaces into new spaces. Of course, you always feel that you don't have enough space, but emptying is the first step before redesigning the existing spaces. So really, we need to take a look at the existing spaces and also arranging the overlapping spaces or the spaces of overlapping functions should be the first step. And we always feel the same, that we don't have enough space in our house, but we need to first review the existing usage of the existing spaces. And another question to Professor Leitner.
It's in English, and the question is written in English, so I think that was in consideration of the kind consideration of interpreter. So INET-Z participant posted a question, so I will read the question.
Our participants. I am teaching high school students in Seoul. Do you have any opinions or suggestions on what the most important factor is for Korea to consider in online education in the COVID-19 era? Can you also give us some advice on how to use EdTech effectively and wisely to transform classes and education in Korea?
Okay, so is the question really about teaching high school students as opposed to university or college students? Did I hear that correctly?
I think high school students. Because the participants is the teacher of high school students.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the answer is similar for both high school students and college age students, and that is, it's very easy to overuse technology in the classroom, and it's really, really important to keep students engaged. And so that means, for example, you can use a laptop or an iPad or a device for polling students, asking questions and having the students respond on their phone, their laptop, whatever, to get a sense of what it is that students understand or don't understand. And then there are ways of identifying which students responded in which ways. And what we like to do is to pair students up who have different opinions about the question and ask them to then try to convince each other about the other point of view. So the idea is that if you're going to use technology in the classroom, it has to be done in a way that causes the students to think on their feet and to interact with the teacher and with the material and with their others, their other fellow students. The other important thing to do is to engage in problem solving. So for example, when we teach mathematics, what we do sometimes is we'll have students watch video before coming to class, and then the class session itself is really about problem solving. So you get students together in groups of 2 or 3 or 4, and they work on problems based upon perhaps the video that they watched, and then the teacher can come around and look over the shoulder of the students to see if they're making progress. But the idea is really important that an individual student may not be having a good day and may not contribute to the proof or to the solution to the math problem, but it's important that the other students at the table are able to teach the student who isn't so perhaps ready for the material so that he or she can understand the solution as well. Because then, as a teacher, what I like to do is to call on the most insecure looking person at a table to explain, what the solution was. So you can use technology, in rather straightforward ways. It doesn't have to be very sophisticated. And as I showed you during my presentation, we are really using it to integrate students in a classroom with students who are geographically distant so that everybody can participate. But for high school students, presumably, now that we're getting past the pandemic, students are back in the classroom, and it's important to engage them with the material using technology, as I said, for polling, for finding out what they're thinking, and for really getting them to engage with the material.
Okay, thank you very much for your insightful answer. 네, 다음으로의 질문도 이어지는 질문도 아마 교수님께 연계해서
I think this next question is also to Professor Leitner.
하이브리드 수업을 하기 위한 어떤 기자재 확보.
So it's about securing the devices for the university classroom. So each of the university situation or circumstances is different. So in securing the equipment or technology, I think the situation will be different. So how can the support be provided in using this kind of teaching method? In case of if there are any educators that are struggling in using this kind of devices, how can you provide the right support to this kind of educators?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. So we like to be faculty driven. In other words, we don't like to tell faculty how they should teach. We want them to drive innovation and experimentation. So what we do is we assign a technology expert, an education technology expert to each class. And so the professor, the teacher, has somebody who's very well informed about how to use technology in the classroom and then can help and instruct the faculty members so that he or she feels comfortable when they are in the classroom doing the teaching. It's also, we are very lucky at a place like Harvard, many courses that have more than 15 or 16 students, the faculty member can hire a teaching assistant. Usually that's a younger person, perhaps it's a graduate student, who's very familiar and comfortable with the technology, so that he or she can help the teacher if they run into problems during the class. Because as we all know, it's sometimes very easy, you know, to misconfigure a laptop with audio and video, and you don't want teachers wasting a lot of time at the beginning of class, you know, while they're trying to figure out what's going wrong. The other thing we do is we will sometimes, instead of having a teacher use his or her own computer, we will provide them with one, because we, the technologists, the education technology people, can configure the machine exactly correctly so that there's nothing, you know, we know that there are no viruses, we know that the correct version of the software is installed, we know that the audio-visual connections are done properly. So there's less risk than having somebody bring in their own computer, which might in fact be infected or not be able to connect to the network properly. And that's relatively easy to do, because you basically have the audio-visual computer specialist just bring the laptop in, or have it already secured in the classroom so that all they have to do is open it up, turn it on, and log in with their personal identification. Good question.
Thank you very much. Both are insightful question and answer. 네, 여러분 역시 수준 높은 질문과 또 날카로운 의견.
So we are having discussions with the three presenters of this session, and maybe we can take just another question from the participants. And the person who raised the question is named Lucky. So we are used to using tablets for our education, and we are seeing the students losing their literacy. After the pandemic, because of the online classrooms, a lot of teachers are concerned about the students' inability to really understand the text. Maybe we can utilize, or we need to think about the usage of technology in education. Utilizing tablets in classrooms does not necessarily mean that we use these devices 100%. We need to focus on what we can teach and how the teaching is delivered. And the devices should be utilized whenever it's necessary and whenever it fits the purpose. When it comes to literacy, of course, it's related to reading and understanding. I always highlight the importance of reading. So whenever we have project-based learning or group activities, we always start the activity with reading some texts. And when we utilize devices, you feel the pressure as a teacher that you really need to use the devices a lot, but it shouldn't be about using the devices a lot, but it should be more about using the devices when it's really necessary. And when it comes to literacy, it is really important that you set some time out of the classroom time to encourage students to read books. And what it comes to my mind is that because I don't have experience of teaching kids, we sometimes use tablets to read books. And of course, it would be ideal if you can use devices whenever it's necessary, but for elementary students, they cannot really control their device usage. So do you have any know-how in helping students control their IT device usage time? And do you think that reading books on our tablets can be also considered good? There are two things that you need to think about. Sometimes people wonder whether people really should read paper-based books or people can also read books on using their IT devices. Unfortunately, there are studies that are ongoing to compare these two different types of reading, and because of the blue light, it can worsen students' eyesight. So you have to make sure that you have measures taken in order to protect eyesight of students. But in that regard, maybe paper-based books are better for young students. Sometimes I use my iPad to read papers and published literature. And when I have to leave comments, sometimes it's better to use those devices. What's really important here is that digital literacy. We need to understand how we can appropriately use this technology. Only then students will be able to learn how to use these devices wisely. And we have to improve the digital literacy of our students, and it will help the students to control their device usage time. And through my projects, I had the experience of witnessing how students use the devices. So I had a blended learning classroom, and we created this with the high school teachers. And it was a Japanese class in high school. And what I observed was that, of course, we often use digital learning and blended learning. And we basically think that we have fixed activities. We use devices to read text, and we use the devices to communicate each other. But when I observed how the teaching was delivered, there were also individual studying and debating also included in blended learning. Oftentimes, you equate blended learning with usage of devices, but what I read from overseas papers was that with blended learning, we need to have individual studies of individual students, and we also need to have, for example, debates taking place at the same time. So what I witnessed was that there was a student, and in the Japanese class, compared to other students, was really not engaged. So what the teacher did was, it was a team-based teaching, and one teacher took the student out of the classroom and provided separate teaching, and the student was back to the classroom, and then the student was able to follow up and catch up with other students. And we need to have the support of the space design. Of course, before it is an issue related to device, it is really about what kind of teaching methods are utilized in order to assist the students' learning. We have to have the structure of spaces. Only then we'll be able to both pursue the digital literacy education and blended learning. And the existing structure of our spaces do not encourage such type of teaching, unfortunately. A lot of participants are posting their comments online. Digital literacy is important, and understanding how we best utilize the IT devices is really important. And also the participants are providing their comments on the presentations. So listening to your presentation, some wrote, we now realize the importance of having a really quality space design. Because of the pandemic, now students have limited time outdoors, and because of that, we again understand the renewed importance of indoor spaces like school, classrooms, and workspaces. With the differentiating academic outcomes of students, it is really important to have effective and efficient space design for our schools. So those are some of the comments posted by the participants. And Annette also wrote a comment, and Shin-Dong-Soo also wrote, space can change our perception. When space changes, the student's outcome will also change. And we were able to understand that it really is the case through your presentation. So it is our shared responsibility, I think, to identify dead spaces and transform them into creative spaces. Also, to add some more comments, right before the COVID-19, right after the outbreak of the pandemic, we had a workshop. I was able to obtain new insights. This is actually an unfortunate case. I was able to learn from that teacher. With the pandemic, he realized that the school does not have a lot of spaces for students can gather. And through the workshop, this teacher started to redesign the indoor spaces of his school. And he now realized that existing spaces should be utilized more effectively in order to provide more spaces for students to get together. There are some student lounge or spaces that were not really used often by students, and other dead spaces in the hallways were redefined for online classrooms. So identifying those dead spaces and transforming those into new spaces was a really good idea, and it's also important for in terms of education. Having those new spaces can bring about a lot of change. Different students have different needs for learning, and having 20 or 30 students in one classroom is not really efficient to cater to all those diverse needs. But having diverse spaces will allow students to get together based on their academic achievements, and teachers can function as a facilitator to assist the students' learning. Of course, the pandemic was a global crisis, but thanks to the pandemic, in the field of education and in schools and classrooms, we were able to identify new ways to realize, individualize, and customize learning and teaching. It's like we have problems, and at the same time, we were able to find solutions to the problems. And because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we were able to find solutions for some existing problems. So we were able to turn the crisis into opportunities. The entire world was hit hard by the pandemic, but also it gave us the humanity new opportunities to try and experiment with new things. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, so we'll have to wrap up the Q&A session with the three presenters. As Kim Soo-jung wrote in the chat box, she was really happy to listen to these quality presentations when this was the first time for her to join this forum, and it's been 3 years for me as a moderator, and for me it's always enlightening to listen to the presentations offered by world-renowned scholars and experts. So I also learned a lot, and the first session of the forum is already very productive and fruitful. So we had discussions on shifting paradigms, new learning ecosystems in digital classrooms, and we were able to obtain a lot of important insight. So it's time to wrap up, and I'd like to thank the speakers, especially Professor Leitner, for joining us despite the time difference. And I'd like to also thank Mr. Park and Shin for joining us on site, for giving us to give us the presentation. So we'll have to wrap up TRACK-A1, and we're going to move to TRACK-A2, but we have 1 hour lunch break. In TRACK-A2, we'll have discussions on navigating tomorrow's pathways, narrowing learning gaps, and strengthening social-emotional learning. And we've also invited very important speakers for TRACK-A2. And after the session will resume at 1 p.m. Korea Standard Time.